Give me a sec, y'all. I'm just organizing. There we go. Okay. I'm pretty sure y'all can. Does that text look right to you? Because it's flipped around for me. Anyway, to begin this glorious live stream, I would thank you, the channel members who are now on the roster of Decent Humans. Nuffles, Steve Hughes, the Yabbick, Kriegsman, and Elias, I don't know, or IDK. Thank y'all so much for being channel members. Thank you. So that being said, that being put all the way up and down, hello. Hello, everybody. I hope you everything's kind of dank over here. Yeah, everything's really dank for some reason. Even though I have the lights like right outside the window up on full blast, I still look very dark in the camera. It's really strange. Very strange. Anyway, so what's up with y'all? What is up? How you doing? I think I need to plug this back in. All right, there we go. That's plugged. That's put down. Turn that off. All right, so who is in here? Let me look. All right, Brandon Peters. Hi. Apparently vinegar is just alcohol that's gone bad. Pretty much. Watch it on 1.5 times speed. It's a long video. Oh, yes, text looks fine. Okay. Just making sure. Just making sure. All right, let me see how it looks when I do this. It looks awkward. Let me swap around the horizontal. Does that fix anything? Okay, yeah. So looking this way, I'm looking at the chat. Looking this way, I'm looking at the video. Okay, I got you. All right, so this comes from, ironically, the first person in the live stream always, Brandon Peters. And this is a request from the Discord. So if you want to get into the Discord, the link is in the description box down below. It's down there twice. There's 2 different links. So I think they expire in like 7 days. So get your butt in there. This is from Brandon Peters. Cowardice and lack of training are not the same. There is no excuse. I concur. I concur. Let's see what the deal is. Her.
The number one priority for a law enforcement officer is innocent life. The number 2 priority is your own. If you're not willing to do that, then take the badge off. One, I don't know how these officers that we've identified so far haven't been fired. For cowardice, for incompetence. We are having the debate in the country for the first time in my lifetime that not only will first responders potentially not show up at a right amount of time with the right capability, they might not do anything at all. I am convinced that nobody here knows what they're doing. Not one motherfucker here knows what they're doing. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Philcraft Survival Channel on YouTube. First and foremost, I want to say that I am shocked and appalled by the video. That was a difficult time for the district attorney to release after people on both sides, including the family of the victims, was fighting for it not to be released with audio. And then people from the other side of the argument were saying it needed to be released. It doesn't matter. That's not what this video is about. The video that I'm about to do for you, one, is not monetized. The only reason I'm doing it in such haste is because I want to figure out right now, based on the information that we have, what we can learn from this tragic experience. This happened in a school in Uvalde, Texas, in the United States of America. And whenever you lose life, that's tragic. But when you lose life and see so many opportunities to save and potentially protect life, it bothers me personally. Having children myself, having seen a lot of things behind the scenes, getting a lot of contact from law enforcement officers who were around or involved in this, it bothers me personally. But I want to make sure I get this video out for everybody who's a parent, who's a responsible citizen, and who's in law enforcement to understand what went wrong and what we can do better. Here we go. All right, guys, so the video that I'm going to go through, there are a lot of the things that have been released in segments. The problem with that is there's no context. A lot of people this morning on social media are talking about the guy, for example, who used hand sanitizer in the middle of this whole thing going down, which I have my own opinion about when we get to it. But I'm going to talk through the timeline, as well as the video, as well as the 26-page report that I have on my phone in my hand right now of what went wrong and the tactical assessment of what we could have done better according to ALERT, which is a nonprofit called the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training out of Texas State University, who has done a really good job of doing an assessment on this circumstance and giving their best recommendation and getting it out in a timely manner. I think whenever something like this happens, we need to get this information out as soon as possible to prevent and deter this happening in the future. So let's get to the beginning of this timeline. But first, we want to talk about a few of the segments of time and instances where we could have prevented this in the first place. September 2021, shooter asked sister for help to buy a gun. Before turning 18, the shooter asked his sister to help him buy a gun, and she refuses. Good thing. November 30th, 2021, shooter purchased gun-related accessories, including rifle slings and military-carry vests and optics. Doesn't raise alarms or flags to me. February 28th, 2022, social media group chat discusses the gunman being a school shooter. I'm assuming because of some of the social media presence he had, that was radical, that was crazy, including as a rap artist, music videos that depicted him doing as such. On March 1st to 3rd, 2022, gunman sends a message on Instagram about guns. On March 1st, he says the shooter discusses wanting to purchase a gun in a group chat on Instagram. In another chat on March 3rd, someone tells the shooter, "We're on the street, you're buying a gun." The shooter replies, "Just bought something right now." April 10th to the 13th, gunman purchased 60 high-capacity magazines online. Again, not a telltale, but if you're paying attention and you're putting the pieces together, then it would be. But let me make this very clear. I am somebody who purchases 60 high-capacity magazines online for myself, for my company, because I want to, because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I'm also that radical online, making radical statements in closed chats talking about school shootings. May 14th, 2022, gunman makes an Instagram post where he says, 10 more days. And somebody comments, "Are you going to shoot up a school or something?" And the shooter replies, "No, and stop asking dumb questions and you'll see."
So, yeah, that's a lot of these are not red flags. They're not. As someone who's former military, someone who has worked with any and all type of weapons almost that you could name, some of this stuff, some of this gear, you know, when I was first getting into the military, I had to purchase it myself. I had to go to surplus shops and all that kind of stuff. This was back like during the beginning of the Obama years when the funding and the budget for the military was completely slashed. And so the slashes happened at the, at the individual level, essentially. So there was a lot of gear and stuff that would have made our lives a lot easier that we ended up having to buy ourselves from our paycheck. Oh, whoops. I just dropped my headphones because my desk is still a mess. I'm not fully set up here, but whatever. But yeah, getting all this gear and equipment, that's not a red flag by itself. It's what the person is like themselves. It's the individual, not the tools they're purchasing. If, somebody could purchase an M2, 50 cal machine gun, that's not a red flag to me. But if that person is clearly unhinged or going through a very, very shit time, and then they're purchasing all of this stuff, that is a red flag. Okay? It's the individual, not the stuff they're getting. If this guy had no access to any of this stuff, he would have gotten knives or made a homemade weapon of some kind, or he would have gotten scissors or box cutters. He would have went about his business with or without a gun. So yeah, it's the person, not the gun. But everybody wants to focus on the tool and take most of the blame from the individual and put it on the tool, which makes zero sense.
Not a telltale. May 16th through the 18th, shooter purchases guns and ammunition. The shooter turns 18, the legal age for purchasing a rifle in Texas on May 16th. There's controversy about this because they say you should not be able to buy a gun, or especially a carbine, until you're 21 years old. I was a 17-year-old infantryman in the U.S. Army, prepared to go to war to fight for my country at the age of 17. Men don't develop fully their prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe that makes all those rational and logical decisions, until their mid-20s. I mean, I was practically just a walking incompetent human being if it wasn't for the Army that instilled that discipline.
Let me know if y'all can hear his video, because it's pretty freaking quiet, but I have my volume turned all the way up. My volume's through the roof right now. It's at 100, but it sounds pretty quiet to me. Let me know if you can hear him.
So if we're going to weigh this argument, which I think it's a debate, it's a discussion, we should look at the age of 18, where you're considered an adult, tried as an adult, convicted potentially as an adult for all of these things, and saying, well, why can't a 18-year-old who is allowed to go in the Army and protect and defend the Constitution not allowed to legally defend themselves? But again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole in this, but that same day, he purchases a Smith & Wesson Model MP-15 rifle and a Daniel Defense rifle and 1,740 rounds of 5.56 ammunition. On May 18th, he purchases an additional 375 rounds of Winchester 5.56. A previous briefing received from the state authorities said that the shooter legally purchased 2 AR rifles from a local federally licensed gun store on May 17th and May 20th. On May 24th, the day of the shooting, around 11 a.m., shooter sends Facebook messages to a girl in Germany. The shooter sends private Facebook messages to a girl in Germany he met online and tells her about his plans to shoot his grandmother. Red flag. A red flag is not that you've been assessed and have post-traumatic stress disorder, or that you've sought mental health help in a clinic or a hospital or from a professional. That's not a red flag. The red flag is that he is literally saying to somebody he's going to kill his grandmother. Shooter sends another Facebook message at 11:20 a.m., sends a direct message to at least one recipient saying, I'm going to shoot my grandmother in the head right now and shoot her in elementary school. At 11:21 a.m., gunman's text message to a contact after shooting his grandmother, I just shot my grandma in her head. I'm going to go shoot her by elementary school right now. Shooter steals vehicle and drives to school. After the gunman shoots his grandmother in the face, which I believe she survives. Is that right? She survived. But he steals her vehicle and drives from his home to Robb Elementary School, which is about a 2-mile drive. And Abbott has said that his grandmother called 911. Before the gunman arrives, a teacher props open the door on the west side of the building with a rock. Here we go. This video is from the Hillcrest Memorial Funeral Home, which is across the street from where this is located. This camera is facing the parking lot in the ditch that he crashed into, where 2 funeral home employees begin to move towards the crash because they're thinking somebody just crashed. At 11:28, the shooter crashes the vehicle in a ditch. He exits the vehicle, fires 3 rounds of the gun at 2 male witnesses near a funeral home, and then flees. The 2 witnesses are unarmed, and they call 911. You can see in this map below on the timeline, the funeral home is directly across the road, which is a side street from where the school is and where the shooter crashes his vehicle. Those 2 employees start jogging towards the accident and try to help out the best way they can. You can see they're shooting at him right now at 11:29. The door on the west side of the building is closed. The teacher calls 911. On the video, which is real time, this is happening in real time at 11:29. The same teacher who propped open the door earlier closes the door on the west side of the building. She then yells for students to get into their classrooms. According to school surveillance footage, authorities originally said the teacher had left the door propped open. According to DPS, a teacher at the elementary school makes a 911 call reporting the crash and the shooter noting he had a gun. It is unclear if this is the same teacher yelling at students to get in their classrooms.
Okay, that teacher done messed up. She done messed up. You know why? She should have made sure every door on that side of the building was locked. While she was on the phone calling 911, you want to secure that side of the building first so that the shooter can't enter the building without expending a lot of ammo to try to get through the door. And then you start to expand your security measures outward. So the point of contact should be what was secured first. And then secondary is everything else. And get on the horn with your fellow personnel in the building. Be like, hey, we got to lock this school down now. Lock everything up. Get everybody inside of different doors and shit. Lock everything. And tell the police where the shooter's coming from. Even with 5.56, he'd have a hard time getting through a door. He'd have to shoot that door multiple times. Hopefully he doesn't suffer a ricochet or 2. And he'd have to unload on the door to get one single door open. That buys you time. Time enough for somebody that's armed and ready to come swinging around and start engaging. But of course, what did she do? She panicked. Like, oh God, it's happening here. People are going to say I'm a victim blamer. Here's the thing. If you don't take seriously safety and security, you've made yourself the victim. Facts, up and down. But of course, we're going to find out later that the cops are incompetent and cowardly anyway. They had more than 20 officers in the freaking building. And a lot of them were right next to the door to the freaking classroom. And instead of breaking down that goddamn door, getting in there and putting some steel in them, they chose to wait outside. WT freaking F. All right, I'm going to let the video play. Because I think my ex is on her way over to drop off my son. Yeah, my ex is on her way over to drop off my son. So give me a sec. Let me check something. Damn, this thing loads so freaking slow. Okay. Give me a sec. I got to go get my son inside, but I'm going to let the freaking video play for y'all because I know a good amount of this already.
This is 11:29. We're looking at the timeline right now, and I'm looking at the report. He doesn't make entry into the school until 11:33. 11:33 is when he makes entry to the school. You see him, he gets out of the vehicle and starts walking towards the school with rifle in hand as depicted by the arrow, and then enters the school at 11:33. On this camera, which shows him walking across the street and then walking across the lawn, he's approaching the school. The suspect enters the school from the exterior door in the west hall while holding a rifle. The suspect looked around the hallway and then continued to walk down the west hallway before turning right. The suspect walked past a series of rooms with closed doors and a firewall break before making his way to room 111 and 112. So I'm not going to fast forward this spot because I want you guys to see all of the lead up of how long it took. What I will read you is part of the tactical assessment as read by the law enforcement response assessment that was done by Alert. I gave you the acronym in the beginning. And in note 3, I will read this out loud because by the time I get done reading this, he would have already entered. It says a cell phone, Rod Elementary School, and a body camera, continuing video from Hillcrest Memorial Home. There's audio in this. Out of respect for the family, which their big heart, which I understand because it shocked me to my core to hear the shots ringing out while in the classroom of the children dying, I will not play the audio. I will let you know when that's taking place, but I will not play it. I don't want the trauma myself, and I don't want to affect you on the other end of the screen. Right now it's 11:32. And at this time, the teacher opens the door, hears the gunshots, and then runs inside the school. What's shocking is one of the tactical assessment recommendations was a law enforcement officer arrived at the scene with his rifle, had the suspect as he was walking across the lawn in his sights, and he asked and communicated for help and asked that the law enforcement officers give him permission, the supervisor give him permission to shoot, and he didn't. He even asked the supervisor next to him, and by the time he looked back to his sights, it was too late. We understand the rules of engagement, and that's never okay because he had the authority to use deadly force. Now, right here, which is pretty graphic, before he enters this classroom, that young man went around that corner and saw him enter that classroom, had the situational awareness to not follow him. He broke the first shot, and what you saw is him running away because of the sound of gunfire. Right now, those children in those classrooms, room 111 and room 112, are dying. At 11:33, after he enters the classroom, he goes into room 111. The shooter briefly walks out of the door, classroom door, and then goes back in and shooting some more. He shoots at least 100 rounds inside this room and room 112. They're adjoined. You can see from the bottom, 111 here, 112 here. They have a common connection, which is common in elementary schools. The gunman briefly walked out of 111, then back in, and was able to enter room 112 through an adjoining door. Peter Hernando, the chief of the school district police department, arrives a few minutes later. He said the rooms were locked, but in the surveillance footage, the shooter doesn't appear to encounter a locked door. He enters room 111. A report from the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center also determined the shooter did not appear to encounter a locked door. You have a teacher who witnessed shooting from across the street, a law enforcement officer who could have shot and killed the suspect while he had a rifle and already engaged innocent people, who asked for permission to shoot a bad guy with a rifle walking toward the school, and he fails to do so. The teachers, via their own protocol, don't follow it because their protocol is to lock their doors, and they don't do it. At 11:35, which we're running into right now, Uvalde police entered the school. 3 officers rushed to the same door the gunman used to enter, which was closed. No, not locked, closed. Surveillance footage shows the officers all have pistols, and 2 of them have rifles. 1 officer has external armor and 2 are wearing concealable armor. The enter receive grazing wounds from the gunman. They retreat, and that's about to take place right now. That response time is quick, guys, quick. We also know that active shootings in recent history have only taken minutes for the initial carnage to take place. Nationally, it's about 12 minutes, right in line with the average response time. These guys come into the building. Let me stop and just communicate to you about something right now.
What's she calling about now? Well, yeah. Well, yeah, of course they're going to get into a fight. They always get into fights.
I guess.
They're both girls.
Okay.
So yeah, just let them sort it out themselves. They're not going to kill each other.
But Leila has a bunch of blood in her face.
And?
Let's put her on the run.
And?
And am I not supposed to separate them and they kill each other?
They have to sort it out themselves. Okay. And when you feed them, make sure their food bowls are very much separated. If you give them...
It wasn't even because of that. It's because they wanted to come inside the house, and then Leila started growling at Canela, and then they went inside the little igloo, and then they started fighting, and then we tried to put some water, and then that's when I put Leila over there.
They're going to sort it out themselves.
All right. Okay.
I mean, as long as you're assertive and you're strong with them, they're gonna know who the top dog is. And I'm not there, so you have to be the new top dog. Anytime they were scrapping, all I had to do was just get outside, and they immediately would quit because they knew Dad was gonna fuck them up if they didn't stop. And then I made them kiss and make up, of course. But yeah, otherwise they're not going to kill each other.
Oh, I see. All right. I guess.
So yeah, I mean, you have to handle them.
I guess. Okay, that's all.
Just make sure you give them both treats before you give them food, so that they're not going to fight over like which bowl is more easy to eat out of. Anyway, good luck.
All right, that's all I got.
Okay, bye. Brother. Why I ever was blind to this woman, I don't know. Okay. Let me read the chat. Space Shark, hey, what's up? Hello, brother. How fare you? Hey, I can't give you much, but I can share knowledge. If you wondered how to fight with look up How to Fight with an Axe by Skalagrim. He's let himself go, but he's still good at what he does. Space Shark, ever. Brandon Peters, your ex sounds like a Karen. I don't know how I missed this over the last 8 years, but yeah, somehow I completely missed that part. A Space Shark, laugh out loud. All right, let's continue with the video.
That I've seen after watching this video several times last night in detail. I want you to see something. All right, in about 10 seconds, these guys are going to enter, and I'm going to pause it as they enter, and I'm going to walk you through the law enforcement response assessment and their factual investigative report for that timeline and for the entry of these officers. At 11:35 and 55 seconds, all three Uvalde Police Department officers entered the structure through the west door into the west hallway. These officers were equipped with the following. One, with external armor, which is a chest carrier, a plate carrier. Two, with concealable body armor underneath their duty patrol uniforms. 2 rifles, 3 pistols. At 11:36, 4 officers entered the south hallway through the south door closet to the suspect. It's not clear what equipment these officers had with them. 4 more officers entered the west hallway through the west door at 11:36:03. 3 of these officers were with UPD, Uvalde Police Department, and 1 was from Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department. They were equipped with 3 external body armor carriers and 1 with concealable body armor and pistols. It did not appear that any of the officers were in possession of bridging tools, medical equipment, ballistic shields, or go bags. Go bag is typically a backpack that has a whole bunch of equipment that's essential to the mission.
Okay, immediately there's so much wrong with this. Immediately, there's so much. First off, them entering the building was erroneous as fuck. Erroneous as fuck. You know what? I don't give a goddamn anymore. This is fucking erroneous. They entered the building just at a dead sprint. And they had no formation whatsoever. They weren't even trying to piecemeal the hallway. Okay? If you're moving through the hallway like that and you want to have speed, but still be able to cover each other, you want to move in a triangle formation. Triangle or strong wall. Strong wall is like a straight line. You stay abreast of each other, and all of you have your weapons pointed down range. Okay? Because while you're moving, if you're moving with speed, you want to have your weapon up at the ready already. You want to be going down that hallway fast as you can while aiming that weapon down the hallway. Second off, these dudes aren't prepared. They're not ready for anything like this for some dumb freaking reason. And this is what I mean by the castration of our police departments. Absolute castration. Defund the police has left us with a bunch of incompetent nitwits. Absolute freaking maggots. If myself and my platoon had this scenario, okay, or myself and my team had this scenario in mind, every one of us would have a go bag. We'd all have external armor because it's a lot better against almost all ballistics. And we would have all of our own med kits. On top of that, each one of us would have a type of breaching tool. More often than not, we'd have like a quick breach. So we'd have like a little tiny like dip can with HME, and one side would be one side would be sticky adhesive. And we'd get up there, pull that sucker out the pouch, smack it on that freaking door handle, go right around the corner. The other guys would be on the other side of the door, pop that sucker immediately. As soon as I get it on and I get to the other side of the door, my team is already on the other side of the door, opposite from me, and I pop that sucker. As soon as I do that, we're in. We're in. We're looking for targets. We see him almost immediately. The only armed person in the whole freaking classroom. He is getting 3 entire magazines emptied into him from 3 different personnel entering the freaking door already. Tops, it would take us about 3 seconds to make entry, get inside, and engage the threat. These police are completely and utterly unprepared. And when I'm talking about militarization of police, that's what I'm talking about. They should be trained and operated just like the military. At least train them at the freaking infantry level. If an infantry squad was sent into this building, they know what the hell to do. They know immediately what they're doing. And they're going to make this shit stop very quick. And infantry are basic level comparative to all the rest of us. Basic level. These police don't even have that. They don't even have basic level SOP, tactics, techniques, and procedures for this shit. But of course, what do we get instead? We get a bunch of incompetent fuckwits.
So here's what I want to know. The gentleman on the left side of the hallway, good on you. Let me tell you how difficult it is in an extremist circumstance moving to gunfire to be the number one man. I've been the number one man. I've been in crisis contingencies like this, in combat, in hostage rescues, in crisis sites, where you had to push the momentum of the element. This guy on his own, in my opinion, is pushing the momentum of the entire element on his own. I want you to follow his actions. So him and this other officer move up. We talk about this in tactical gunfighter pistol.
Now I'm going to detract from this heavily. These dudes are chonky. They are chonky. They do not train. I guarantee you that shit. They don't train. Sure, this guy has one good point going for him, but do you see how thick boy these motherfuckers are? Do you see how thick boy they are? You ain't saving shit. You'll be a good bullet sponge, but that's about it.
On carbine courses for both civilians and law enforcement. When you're pushing the pace, you're measuring and calculating your ability to both remain calm so that you can be quick, but also accurate on target. If you hit that front door, the breach point, and your heart rate is elevated above 150 beats per minute, your performance is going to degrade. Because not only is the physical movement affecting you, but most certainly stress.
And he brings up a good point here. He brings up a good point. If you're the point man and you're entering the building first, you're setting the pace for everybody behind you. That's why in our SOP for my team, the point dude was never the first guy in the room unless he had no choice. And the reason for that is because he's the first one to get there. He's under a lot more pressure. He's under a lot more tension than the rest of the team because the rest of the team's just following him and getting ready to engage. Him as the point man, not only is he taking in the tactical situation right in front of the element, he's also got to calculate what it takes to take down that door because he's going to be the one setting the breach. And on top of that, he has to ensure that the entire team is on point as soon as he gets there. He's got a lot of shit on his mind. He is breaking himself to get to the point where he's most needed so he can allow his team to effect entry. So that's why the point man was never the first guy, if we could help it. And I've been point man quite a few times in my life. And that's why point man wasn't the very first one inside the door. If the door was shut, that is. If the door is not shut, point man is leading the element in. Everybody else already knows behind him what they're going to do, which direction they're going, and what it is they're going to be engaging. Okay, because we trained for that, we prepared for that. But if the door is shut, point man's going to be the one setting that charge, blowing it, and he'll be the last guy inside. Because to get there first, knowing the rest of the area is clear, he's setting it up for the rest of us to follow. Okay? And now, of course, there's multiple different ways to skin a cat. I know, but that's the one that worked the best for us, for myself and my team. But in this case, all this officer did was set the pace for everybody else to get close to the door, and that's all that happened. They didn't have any way to breach the door. And on top of that, I don't even know if the door was locked or not. I guess we'll find out. But if the door was unlocked, point man could have got to the door, waited for those two officers to catch up, and popped that sucker open. With them two coming in at the ready. That's what he could have done. But what did he do? Nothing.
It's suppressing all of your technical capability. That cortisol, that adrenaline, which is making you perform. It's the mobility tactic for that primal survival instinct. To get you to move, you have to strike the balance. That means you have to calm yourself down. That doesn't mean you have to move surreptitiously to the crisis point. It means you need to arrive prepared to do work. So here's what we have. One officer pushing the momentum. Number one man is never wrong because he's driving the momentum. Your job as the number two man, in this case, the guy with the rifle who's in patrol, his patrol uniform, he is not supporting number two. Look at number three as he comes into this hallway. No support. You know why? He's scared. And that's normal. Except when you train, you build confidence. When you train, you work on autopilot. It's almost an autonomic response. But when you're in fear for your life because emotions are taking over, because you're not trained, because we defunded you, this is the result you get. So the number 33 officer is not supporting number one and number two. He's hesitantly moving, giving hand and arm signals to walk behind, and he's got a rifle. Guys, a pistol's job is to maneuver to the rifle. God, I wish the number one guy would have had the rifle. But you know what? Good on him for taking the momentum and driving it towards the threat, towards the sound of gunfire. While the men behind him who have carbines that shoot 2,500 feet per second, with all the energy and foot-pounds, all the capability and engaging that suspect and putting him in the dirt, are hesitating and not supporting him. So at this time, at 11:36:04, the last shots from the initial barrage from the suspect were fired. There were 7 officers in the west hallway and 4 officers in the south hallway. Let me say that again for you. There were 7 officers in the west hallway and 4 officers in the south hallway at 11:36, 3 minutes and 4 seconds after this guy entered the classroom. After he entered the school, seconds later he goes to the classroom. 3 minutes and 4 seconds. Response time is insanely fast and incredibly awesome to see a department do that. But there's a difference between the way you move and the way you arrive and the way that you tactically handle the situation. At 11:30.
They got there within 4 minutes, started moving to the crisis point within 4 minutes, and they had 7 officers in the hallway already. Yet, what the fuck do we see? Hesitation, loss of momentum, loss of initiative, and no control over the situation whatsoever. Where the hell is the NCO? Where? Or at least the lieutenants. Where the hell are they? Okay, they're not doing shit. So at my level, as just a beat cop dude, I got to take control of the situation. Okay, hey, you with a freaking carbine, get your butt over here now. I'm going to open this door. As soon as I do, engage the target. Simple 3 seconds. Pop open door. Guy with carbine moves in, shoots the shooter until he drops. But no, what do we see? Hesitation, loss of momentum, loss of initiative, cowardice, immediately present, and nobody is taking the initiative back. Nobody. It may sound simple, because it is. It's absolutely simple. So many kids, too many kids, died because of this police department's incompetence. Thank you, defund the police. Thank you, anti-militarization of the police department's people. Thank you, Democrats. Thank you, some Republicans. Thank you to all the people who should believe that no guns should be into schools. Thank you.
6 after the last initial shots were fired at 11:36. 10 seconds, officers from the west and south hallway advanced to room 111 and 12. As the officers entered the threshold of 111 and 12, they were fired upon by the suspect.
And here's another thing I have to address. It's better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. It's always better. Because on either end, you're going to be doing the right thing. Anyway, let me read the chat real quick. I see y'all, a little bit in the chat. All right. Space Shark, laugh out loud. There's already a lot of wrong. Brandon Peters, triangle. Shapes. A strong walling, it's a line, woo, evil math about shapes. Space Shark, yes, yes. Brandon Peters, apparently there was a cop who had the guy sighted before he entered the building, but didn't shoot, and instead he asked if he could shoot. Then by the time he turned back, the bad guy was gone. If I ever met that cop, I would punch him square in the face. And then I'd probably keep punching until I didn't have any skin left on my freaking knuckles. I'd bash his goddamn face in. Asking permission to shoot? You know what this dude is doing. You know what he's about to do, but you ask for permission. Then again, this is partly the fault of the people who are harping so hard on the minute instances of the police doing the wrong thing. Because now every single cop is going to be more scared for themselves in their career and their job than protecting the public. Because they're more scared of you penalizing them for doing a what they call a wrong shoot or a bad shoot versus protecting a bunch of kids in a school. Thank you, defund the police people, for your stupidity. A Space Shark. I probably shouldn't say this, but the police as it stands currently should be replaced with an entirely new branch of military. I absolutely agree. I agree entirely. In fact, why not change it from police to local military? Okay? Because your usual infantry squad, even in the National Guard, which a lot of us call nasty girls, because they weren't as good as us back in the day, but I don't know anymore. Even the National Guard would perform a shit ton better than this entire freaking department. And people are like, oh, you shouldn't be showing up with body armor and military style rifles and, you know, loaded to the gills. Okay, are you going to be the one that engages with criminals? Are you going to be the one that puts your life at risk to stop the bad people in your neighborhood? Are you the one who's going to respond to a crisis? No? Then shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. You got no say in this. Actually, you shouldn't have any say in this. You really shouldn't. If you're not dealing with this shit every day of the week, then you got no business having an opinion. You should be completely ignored. Sure, you can say what you want, but nobody should take whatever you say seriously. Brandon Peters 3 times. At Space Shark, yep. Agreed at Blastcap. Laugh out loud, nasty girls. Yes, indeed. All right, let's continue.
Who was in room 111 at the time? The gunfire at 11:37 and the gunfire at 11:37:10 drove the officers away from the threshold of room 111 and room 112 and back to the west and south hallways prior to either team making contact with either either 111 or 112. So the gunfire they're about to receive, which will be very clear and apparent. You can see them on the north side of this situation and the south side of this situation looking for angles. This guy's looking for angles. Again, the number one man who came in this looking for the suspect, moving to the sound of gunfire while his teammates are behind is the problem. He's looking for a loophole. He's looking for angles because in this report, I want you to understand there is a slat. Hopefully, John, we can get I want to get a picture of the breach point and the door that was in question. The breach point in the door is a single door with a slot, which is almost impossible to see. You can see right now at this timeline on mark at a 30 after, they receive incoming fire. The officer who's down and checking his head, look, I want to criticize the officers who aren't doing their fucking job. Will you bleep that out? I want to criticize the officers that are scared and fear other lives, because I want to identify for you the reason this is happening institutionally is not just a lack of intestinal fortitude, but a lack of training. I'm seeing egregious things take place, which I'll talk about tactically. But I will give credit where credit's due, because this damn officer in the long sleeve button-up shirt with a gray vest, I don't know who he is, but this man is in the fight by himself. It emotionally drives me crazy, because I see these cops and their sexy haircuts and their sexy equipment and their shiny boots and shit, and they want to do the job. They want to have the Punisher Soul sticker on the back of their pickup truck, the thin blue line T-shirt. But when it's time to go to fucking work and take care of innocent children who are dying, the only person I see in this tactical scenario doing fucking anything is the oldest man there. He gets shot. He likely took shrapnel. According to the report, he got injured. He retreats, checks his wounds. He's okay. He doesn't feel sorry for himself. After he checks himself, he gets his pistol back in the fight, and he's looking for more work. So he gets his pistol, he lines it up, he's taking a position and stance, and he's looking for support. He's looking for support. You got an officer on the right side of this in Seoul. If you're a fucking cop and you're listening to me, I want you to understand something. Seoul and Typical Index, which you learned because the institution who trained you, is putting your gun to sleep in a hostage rescue or a crisis like an active shooting, and you're setting yourself up to be shot in the face and die. That gun should be oriented down the hallway towards the threat, not at the ground at your fucking boots. I want you to understand that you are being trained wrong. You are being trained wrong. The officer on the right is completely checked out. He's a patrol officer. He looks like a rookie. He looks young, and he has no clue what the fuck he's doing. I apologize for cussing. The officer on the left has his carbine finally in the fight. He has an EOTech. I can see it from here, just looking at the video. And he is not in a position to help anybody do anything. Let me use the arrow and show you where these guys should be. There is a wall right here that is on the side of the wall that is a perfect position for him to get the carbine in the fight. These guys are in a complete defensive perimeter. This is containment, guys. This is not how we operate in an active shooting. When we are in an active shooting, by protocol in the state of Texas and every institution in America, law enforcement, we need to be moving aggressively to end the threat. We don't get timeouts. We don't give timeouts to suspects who have killed kids or are killing innocent life, who initiate an active shooting, who have flipped the switch. And we certainly don't barricade ourselves and contain ourselves in defensive perimeters when this is happening.
He's absolutely right. Absolutely right. As soon as Point Dude came back down the hallway, the other two should have been up here. They should have been up here. At the very freaking least. But no, what happened? As soon as he was coming back, there was a mad dash of everybody to come back this way. Freaking failure. Absolute failure.
These officers, all of them, should be pulling cross coverage on this door, this major part of this threshold, which is basically a hallway, but this creates another threshold where they should be lined out, getting the carbine position on the door. On the door. When I position in this location, I'm waiting or I'm not. For mutual support to be able to move up to the breach point, get that door open at all cost. You don't need a fucking breaching tool. You need creativity. At all costs, that door needs to be penetrated. It is a door. The locking mechanism with a shotgun, even with a carbine, could be potentially breached. But again, what are we talking about at the level of training these officers have, their capability, and how fear and emotions are affecting their inability to do anything? Let's see how it unfolds. It's now 11:37 in the timeline.
Not to mention, what are the police doing outside? What are the police doing outside? Me personally, if there's already officers in the hallway and I hear about that, I'm going to look for an alternate breach point or an alternate engagement point. If there's windows in that classroom, I want people on it. I want people on it. And even with a sidearm. As soon as I get to that window and I know where the threat is, I'm engaging. I could end the threat right freaking there. And then tell the other officers, hey, look, okay, target down. You need to breach now. But what are they doing? What are they doing? Doesn't even look like it doesn't sound like anyone's looking for an alternate breach point at the same time that they are focused on the door.
I'm going to go off the report that was delivered by alert. It's 11:37 and 30 seconds. At 11:38, the suspect concludes firing. According to audio estimates, 11 rounds are fired. At 11:38, I want you to stop. Let's just stop right there before we hit the 11:38 mark, because you're not going to be able to hear it, because I don't want you to hear the shots. I don't want to hear the shots. At 11:38 and 38 seconds, let me read this again. The suspect concludes firing. According to audio estimates, 11 rounds are fired. Investigators advised that 2 officers were injured by building material fragments caused by the suspect's rounds passing through the walls. Officers generally remain at the intersection of the west and south hallway and the south hallway near south entrance until they find an assault. A lot of people I've heard, including officers that I respect, said as soon as the shots were concluded that this turned into a barricaded suspect. You don't know your fucking job. That's not how this works. You don't get to become an active shooter, turn on the switch, kill innocent people, and then turn off the switch because you want a timeout. That's why it's called an active shooter. An active shooter doesn't become inactive because he stops shooting. The assumption here is that this shooter will continue to rampage and kill more innocent life. There are dozens of students in and around the vicinity of in classroom 111, in classroom 112, that we have to worry about. Even if the thought process was, well, he didn't shoot anymore, so we have to err on the side of caution, you have students that I promise you, when the coroner gets back during the investigation, would have lived if received medical treatment of their trauma and the early onset of an hour window. One of the officers' wives was shot because she was a teacher. She called 911 and said she was shot. 911 wasn't coming. Not only were they not coming, they weren't coming for an hour. Over an hour. She bled out and she died.
So this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Okay. You want to act fast. Not just to end the threat, but to give immediate aid. And what I mean by immediate aid is that you want to get in there and start trying to stop bleeding, put on tourniquets, get on bandages so they don't get infected, keep them alive till they can reach somewhere where they can receive critical care. They all failed. Absolutely failed. And they were there forever. That woman that was shot, someone could have gotten in there, stuffed some gauze in the wound real tight, and I mean real tight, so that she has a lot less bleeding. Put on a pressure dressing and a tourniquet, depending on where she got shot, and she might have lived. In fact, that could have been the case for multiple of those kids. But no, what do these cops do? They stood in the hallway and just listened.
So even if we knew the suspect was out of ammo, he wasn't shooting anymore, every opportunity of offensive action on that breach point should have been tried, should have been attempted to be able to get those children out of that harmful situation. There is no argument or debate in this. Every protocol, every SOP will tell you the same. If you are saying anything otherwise, you are blowing smoke up people's asses and you are lying. You are fucking lying. At 11:36, at 11:38 and 11 seconds, officers on scene but outside the hallway call for additional assistance to include a tactical team with specialized capability. In my opinion, at 11:38, when that call was made, that's where we lose the precious moments and the opportunity to kill the bad guy.
Like I said already, they lost the initiative. They lost momentum and were therefore rendered absolutely and completely ineffective. As soon as officers were on scene, it's your freaking job. It's your job. You signed up for it. You put on the badge and got the gun. You should have immediately, with the first 3 or 4 that got into the building, immediately should have effected entry and started putting rounds in that dude.
That's where this entire thing changes and goes bizarro world. The officer who's holding the pistol, who's aggressively still trying to get in the fight and trying to communicate, is one officer. This fucking dude, this douchebag right here, fire this motherfucker right now. Fire this dude right now. This incompetent patrol officer standing there, not supporting the number one man who's aggressively trying to campaign in his actions to get inside that classroom in desperation. While this dude's sitting at stool, chewing bubblegum, like literally not doing anything. Fire his ass right now. The officer goes up, takes a knee to get a tactical position. Not one officer follows him. Not one. It's 11:37 and 59 seconds. Not one officer gets up off their ass and does anything to support this guy. This guy on the left side of the hallway has his car being pointed at the concrete, while the other officer has his pistol pointed at the concrete. They are staring at each other. While there is an active shooter in 2 classrooms that just murdered kids. And the only body doing anything about it is this officer up here who's on a knee trying to get a tactical vantage point to be able to end this dude's life. Fire that motherfucker on the left too. Fire him. So these dudes just hanging out, not doing anything. The only body in harm's way is the guy looking for angles. He pushes across a fatal funnel while this dude's just walking around at school, doing absolutely nothing. Like he's on patrol at a fucking parade, doing nothing. The officer who's actually doing something is on his knee looking for that bad guy to show his face so he can shoot him in it. As this unfolds, at 11:38:37, an officer outside the hallway advises the suspect is contained. That's what the call was made. The suspect is contained. You even know what fucking containment means? You do contain it when you surround a location to secure it for people going in and bad guys going out. You still have to work the crisis site, which this is. This is the X, guys. Law enforcement. This is the X. This is where bad things happen. Just because you contain the scene doesn't mean you completely divulge yourself of responsibility of the things taking place on the scene. You don't go, I'm a police officer to serve and protect, and then go to containment, and then you say, I'm a security guard at a checkpoint. That's what all these cops did. Even their posturing after the call was made, that they're now containing the bad guy, and you notice all of their postures have changed. Here's my pet peeve, just a tactical consideration. The guy on the left is using his head to clear inside the hallway. He's using a clearing technique that's used by incompetent human beings who want to get shot in their nuggets. I'm going to look to see if a bad guy's there. Well, if there's a bad guy there and your gun's pointing at the earth, you don't have enough time to lift your gun to orient it towards the threat of the barrel that's pointing at your head, and you just die. Guys, gals of law enforcement, never clear and identify friend from foe and not have a shooting solution to address the potential threat. You will die. Do not do that. That's free. You don't need institutional training. You don't need to go outside and spend a lot of money. That's free. Where you point your eyes to identify where the bad guy is, point your gun. At 11:40 and 58 seconds, which we're about to approach, the suspect fires 1 round according to audio estimates. God help you all in this situation that allowed for that guy to shoot that 1 round. And God, pray for you that you don't find out through investigation that 1 round was into a child or into a teacher. Because if we're looking at the circumstance right now, where we had the initiative and the momentum, and then we stopped because we called containment, you lost it all. Now it's on you. Because every single child that dies now is on you.
Facts. Absolute facts.
It's on you guys. We shouldn't be saying that these officers are responsible for the lives of these children in this classroom, because they are. They weren't until they arrived. Now it's their duty. That's why it's called duty, guys. It's their duty to protect these children. DPS had put out a statement based on the protocol and doctrine that was created for the state of Texas, which is mostly used in protocol across the country, that the number 1 priority for a law enforcement officer is innocent life. The number 2 priority is your own. If you're not willing to do that, then take the fucking badge off.
Facts.
One, I don't know how these officers that we've identified so far haven't been fucking fired for cowardice, for incompetence. But here we are. Again, we don't want to do anything about the problem. The problems, how about leftists who push radical policy that defunds law enforcement officers' ability to protect? Those are the same people that will be standing outside of the school with a picket, in the picket line, talking about how cops suck, how they're all bootlickers. How about the policy to defund them is just as much responsible as these cowardice cops, because they don't get the training. At 11:41, dispatch asked via radio if the door was locked. A UPD officer responds, "I'm not sure, but we have a hooligan to break it." They've identified they have a hooligan or a breaching tool on site to break it. At 11:44, the suspect fires one more round according to audio estimates. I literally want to play the audio at 11:44 so you can hear that shot break and use your fucking imagination. Just use your fucking imagination. So we're working a tactical scenario. These officers are behind cover. This is true cover. This is not concealment. These are walls that will stop bullets. None of them are in a position except for the hero here, who's actually doing his job, who's not being supported. He's on a knee using relative cover with his gun oriented towards the threat, and he's still working the problem. Dude is on his hands and knees crawling towards the threat with no support. Likely at this point is told, stand down. For the second time, goes down the hallway. This is the second time, right, John? Second time, 11:40, goes down the hallway by himself again. Checks his head in the open. Now the dude just doesn't give a fuck. But nobody's supporting him. We have 11 officers in this hallway right now. 11 with guns. At 11:48, a police officer enters through the west hallway and states, she says she is shot, referring to his wife. He is escorted outside the building. We are having the debate in the country for the first time in my lifetime that not only will first responders potentially not show up in the right amount of time with the right capability, they might not do anything at all. Period. I don't want to say that out loud because I have plenty of officers. Midland SWAT, New Jersey State Patrol, San Antonio Police Department. I know many officers I trained throughout the country that would give their lives for a complete stranger, that would run into harm's way. I've seen it. But you have these officers not doing anything, including an officer whose spouse is in there dying and they don't want to do anything. They have to escort him away. I would terminal list that shit. Like, it would be a very fucking bad day. It'd be a very bad year for a lot of fucking people. The first ballistic shield enters the hallway at 11:52. As these guys are working this problem, we get officers in positions. They're now holding the rifles oriented up on the threat. They're getting a little cross coverage. They're actually looking through their optic, and they look like they have more competent officers who showed up. I don't know their background, but I can tell from their kit, I can tell from their positioning that at least they're getting into the fight. At least they're getting into the fight. The problem is tick-tock, Doc. The clock is fucking ticking.
So, people who are against militarization of the police, you're to blame for this. You are. The defund the police people, you're to blame for this. You've castrated law enforcement. Not only that, defund the police made a lot of good police quit. So now we mostly have leftovers. Guys with just a badge and a gun. And that's all they are. Is a badge and a gun. That's it. They're a placeholder. They're someone who sits on the stands, but still has a uniform on. If every single squad car had a breach tool, a medical kit bag, a ballistic shield, and an AR of some kind, and the training to use all four, and the confidence to do so, not to mention individuals who are willing to use them, we wouldn't be looking at this right now, would we? Thank you, Democrats. Thank you for being absolute fucking tools.
Kids are bleeding out, and potentially more lives are going to be lost. And what are you doing about it? The answer is nothing. The answer is nothing. At 11:52, we bring the shield in. I won't offer any excuse for these law enforcement officers. I don't. There is none. Zero excuses. Cowards. You're all cowards. Mike Glover is telling you to your face, you can come here to Beaver City, Utah, to my face, and I will call you a coward to your face. But let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not trained. Because training and cowardice are two very different things. If you're trained and you have the confidence, then you potentially will run to the sound of gunfire. If you're not trained and you use emotion that controls and consumes you, and you still fight through it with grit, that's another thing entirely. We see that's not the case. But at this point, the tactical situation completely changes at 11:52 is a change because a ballistic shield arrives. You have body armor, you have a carbine in front of your body armor. That's all I need. That's all these officers needed. But now you have a shield. A ballistic shield that is capable of sucking up the rounds from the suspect that will protect you, just in case you thought you didn't want to die for bullets. That's likely the case. I don't want to die, so I don't want to be in this situation. Well, you have a ballistic shield now. So at the moment that the ballistic shield arrives, it sits in the hallway for a long period of time. That shield, when it arrived, should have got set up on the first guy. They could have came up with a hasty plan in the hallway, and they could have started moving to contact, expecting that they're going to pick rounds in the shield, maybe even in the legs. But if they had the shield in front of them with a rifle or carbine offset or in front of the shield, they would easily put the suspect down. But they don't do that, again. So we're at 11:52. After the first ballistic shield arrives, a DPS special agent arrived at the perimeter and was advised to man the perimeter. He shows up at 11:53 at this time. And it says, another officer makes a comment about there being kids still in the building. The DPS special agent advised, if there is, then they just need to go in. I work with DPS. My former 19th Group commander was a commander in DPS. DPS gets good training. They understand these protocols. The comment is made, what, there's kids still in there? Well, why the hell are they going in? Because obviously if you found out, hey man, it's just a suspect in an empty classroom, different circumstance, drive a robot with an explosive and clock it off. Who cares how you do it? The children are in the classroom. Well, we didn't know that. You didn't know that. Everybody knew that because there were calls coming from kids and the teacher in the classroom that there were kids in the classroom. We ignore that. Oh, at 12:03, a second ballistic shield shows up. At 12:04, a third shield arrives on the scene of the hallway. At 12:10, officers on the west hallway begin passing out and donning gas mask.
You got 3 ballistic shields. Have a top guy and a bottom guy. And then have everybody else on file right on either side. And move to freaking contact. Breach that door. And lumber him down. I knew it was really bad. But I didn't know how bad. Until I was watching this. This is fucking erroneous. You got 3 ballistic shields. Take the highest rated one and start getting in there.
Okay. Law enforcement officers are certainly undertrained. But let me give you just a little education on law enforcement officers and their use of gas masks and tactics surrounding the use of gas. This would be CS in this case, or some kind of pepper ball. There is no tactical training for law enforcement in the country for this outside of large departments, SWAT teams. So the fact they're even handing out masks when they have 3 ballistic shields in their possession and carbines. Don't even have fucking words at this point. Let's take a break. You can get to 12. Oh, yeah, 12:13. We'll start off with there because at 12:13, a 911 call from a child explained that there were several children and one other of her teachers deceased. That's calling from the classroom. How that call doesn't come in from dispatch and how they don't go, a child just called from in here, that there are people alive and there are people dying. Give me the fucking gun. Give me the fucking shield. Give me something. If somebody go in and they don't do anything, you'll see through the timeline as it aggravates the shit out of me. Disgusting. That's all I got. Fucking retards. I'm convinced that nobody here knows what the fuck they're doing. Not one motherfucker here knows what the fuck they're doing. All right, guys, so 12:14, which we're approaching 12:14 and 10, CS gas canisters and launcher deliverables, a variety of them are brought in. So
why wouldn't they have these on hand already? Oh, wait, because defund the police. Because anti-militarize the police. This is such a failure on so many levels.
They're donning mask, and then they're getting ready for a CS hit. It does not make sense. When you go from a hasty crisis to a more deliberate defensive mindset, the tactics change. And why they were staging for a CS canister hit is beyond me. It's beyond me. You want the upper hand. You have the upper hand with precious moments that you lost when you lost that momentum, when you gave away the opportunity for, in haste, a lot of emotion, a lot of forward movement. You gave all that away when you decided to call containment. And you notice my demeanor is a little bit different because I take a break from this because I'm so freaking agitated by the whole thing. This is where things start to change definitively for the second time based on the arrival and timeline. At 12:13, dispatchers received numerous 911 calls from a child explaining that there were several children and one other teacher deceased and another teacher hurt in room 112. This kid's alive. He's in a room with an active shooter who just murdered 19 children and 2 teachers. And this kid's alive, calling 911 for help. 12:13. 12:13, guys. He entered the building at 11:33. 11:33. And here we are at 12:13. And he's calling 911 from inside the classroom. Again, the criteria for launching a deliberate hostage rescue, in this case, would again have been that call. Because the excuse would have been, we don't know the current situation. Now you do. There are children in the room with a barricaded now suspect, because you barricaded him. You contained him by setting up a perimeter, and you get word that there are still children alive. You go into a deliberate, not a hasty, because it's deliberate because it's planned, pre-planned, and you set up your SOPs for that pre-planned hostage rescue that takes place. At 12:15, this is where the tide shifts. Right now it's 12:13, and you already see it. There's a U.S. Border Patrol officer who's standing, likely here in the middle. I don't know if he's a BORTAC agent, because Border Patrol most certainly use armor. But BORTAC agents are the most highly trained federal agents in the United States of America. I know because I've trained with them personally. They are very capable, they are very competent, and they're the guys you want to do the job. At 12:15 and 27 seconds, it appears tactical team members of the U.S. Border Patrol tactical teams, BORTAC, arrive and assist with fortifying with law enforcement positions at the intersections with ballistic shields. So let's get to the 12:15. So they're already in there at 12:13. So this guy looks to be a BORTAC agent. This guy looks to be BORTAC. This guy with a Cry Precision or a Oxcore helmet looks to be a BORTAC agent. They are set up in a right position to address this threat. This right now is positioning for forward movement for a surreptitious movement to a breach point. That looks to me like what they're doing. Up in the top left corner, you see Officer Gazaway's body camera of activity outside of it. So let's go ahead and continue to roll. This is going to remain kind of the same until 12:20, where they're working the problem set. At this point, because it's deliberate, they're likely doing a lot of deconfliction. You see right here, up in the Officer Gazaway's camera, you got a couple of morbidly obese officers. That's a problem. It's never a problem institutionally when you want to keep a guy in his job. When you hook a brother up, that's never a problem. But when you're trying to save lives, it becomes a problem because that dude's a liability. You got 2 types of law enforcement officers, like you have 2 types of people in life: assets and liabilities. What are you doing? If you're a liability and you're hindering the ability for people to do their job, or the ability for these officers to get on target and save lives, then you're a liability. You're not an asset. Now, what it looks like at 12:19 is them donning masks and then getting ready for a CS hit, but I don't know if it's BORTAC who's making that call. I will say if it's BORTAC that made that call, different consideration. If it's local patrol officers making that call to don masks, get the hell out of my face with that. Get the hell out of my face. If it's BORTAC, they are quite capable of doing that. Now, here's the infamous Jack Wagon and the blue pat plaid who shows up off. You can see an Officer Gazaway's body camera, and he's kind of floating around. Let's see if we can pick him up in a little bit of advanced movement. So there's an officer that is right here in the top left of this corner who's wearing a ballistic helmet and a sheriff's vest. I don't know who this person is. Here's my assumption. Based on his incompetency in moving around a tactical situation, like he's literally in the wrong place, like he's playing dress up. He looks incompetent in just his behavior and movement. I think that's either a medic, that's a paramedic attached, likely not because he seems a little bit more older. He might be the doctor assigned to this department. I could be completely wrong. But he's the guy who goes to get hand sanitizer, as you'll see in the video, and puts hand sanitizer on his hands. Why would he ever do that? I don't know. But if he does it before he dons gloves because he's about to treat a mass casualty event and he knows that, then different circumstances. Then a cop hitting some hand sanitizer in the lull, waiting on people to get off their ass and do something about it while people, including children, are dying. I take issue with that. I'm going to err based on my experience in working with doctors, trauma first aid medics on site and on scene, that he's not a tactical guy. Somebody in the comments, if you want to leave it below because you know, please leave us that feedback. It would be great. Don't be a dickhead about it. 12:20, a fourth ballistic shield arrives in the West Hallway. A fourth. 12:21, 4 shots are fired by the suspect from within one of the Doom classrooms. There was a debate saying that no shots were fired. Nobody else was killed. 4 more shots at 12:20, nearly 50 minutes after he enters the school, are fired. Where did those 4 shots go?
50 freaking minutes. 50 minutes. Somebody can bleed out in less than a minute if they're hitting the right spot. Less than a minute. They waited 50 minutes to do anything. So much unnecessary death because of sheer incompetence. They were unprepared, defunded, castrated, and not militarized. And this is the result of that. Democrats.
Now, without getting into too many deliberate tactics of special operations or law enforcement organizations, when 4 shots are heard within a classroom, the time to go is now. There is no more waiting. There is no more negotiation. There is no more waiting. This is a hasty assault.
As soon as the first shots are fired, all of those officers should have been on that door and pushing their way through immediately.
We rescue good people. We kill bad. When those 4 shots went off. But again, that doesn't happen. At 12:21, BORTAC members moved to a double doors within 36 feet of rooms 111 and 112, bringing 2 ballistic shields. However, no assault on the rooms was conducted. We were told that BORTAC were the heroes. They came in and got the job done. There's probably a lot of confusion at this point because nobody knows who the hell's in charge, as I'll brief you in the follow-up after the video. At 12:23, BP medical team members began setting up medical triage in the east hallway for the restrooms. They had numerous backboards, medical kits, a defibrillator, as well as bleeding control supplies. This aggravates me. Setting up for triage in advance of the tactical movement of these officers bewilders me. The number one priority should have been killing the bad guy and then get those kids out of that classroom and move them a couple hundred feet to the ambulances that are set out on where containment should be. We shouldn't be containing the bad guy in a hallway in a classroom. We should be killing him. We shouldn't be setting up containment 36 feet away in a static position, preempting an assault. We should be assaulting now. And the fact that they had time to set up for triage, knowing that there's children that are fighting for their little lives inside that classroom. At 12:21, backing up until 12:34, a continuous conversation takes place in the south hallway involving the police chief of UCISD, Aaron Bondo, and a UPD officer discussing tactical options and considerations, including snipers, windows, and how to get into the classroom.
This is all taking way too long. This already took way too long. As soon as they lost momentum and initiative, this went from bad to catastrophic. If it was myself and 3 of my teammates that entered that hallway first, we would have effected a breach immediately and saved a lot of lives. Immediately. And that's with us knowing as soon as we open that door, we're taking fire. But that also means those kids are no longer taking fire. We know it, we accept it, and we carry forward anyways. As soon as they needed like the extra 50 personnel for no freaking reason, defunding the police, really stupid idea. Castrating the police, an extra stupid idea. not militarizing the police, the absolute most erroneous idea ever.
They also discuss who has the keys, testing keys, the probability of the door being locked, and if kids and teachers are dying or dead. Here's where things got complicated. When they did the initial assault into the room, because the suspect walked into the classroom just like he walked into the school, the officers at this point, because they lost the tactical advantage of speed, surprise, and violence of action, no longer have the momentum. So what's taking place right now is all the deliberate tactical considerations that would happen in developing your SOPs, guys, in fucking training. You don't do that shit on the X when kids are dying. You do it when your fat ass is fucking eating donuts. When you're virtue signaling to the world how badass you are, that's when you do that. Now we're sitting outside of the hallway where children are bleeding to death, and we're talking about tactical considerations in a conversation. At 12:35, BD agents, Border Patrol agents arrive in the west hallway with the first observed breaching tool, a holiday. From 12:37 until 12:47, Chief Anarno, I don't even like to say his fucking name, attempts to negotiate with the suspect. Okay.
What negotiation is there to be had at this point? There's none. There is no negotiation. What happened to we don't negotiate with terrorists? What happened to that? This dude at this point in time is a terrorist. He's a threat. Therefore, he should be immediately eliminated. You don't negotiate with criminals. You don't. You take them down.
I would consider charges against the chief of this police department, or Aaron Dondo, or whatever the fuck his name is. The level of incompetence for this chief in his position cost these children their lives. Let's say it out loud. The indecision, the lack of decision making, the culture of the institution, and the actual things that he did and did not do cost children their lives. Is there a discussion or debate about that? No. What cost the children their lives is the active shooter until the police arrived. And then it all changed. Because now there's control from an institution whose job it is to serve and protect those innocent lives. At 12:50, let's get to the 12:37 and 12:47. He attempts to negotiate with the suspect speaking in English and Spanish. The chief also calls someone to try and look into the windows from the outside. He then begins asking for more keys. At 12:46, he exclaims, if y'all are ready to do it, you do it. But you should distract him out the window. Real leadership there, chief. Real good leadership there. If you're not going to do it, just do it. At 12:46, he exclaims, if you're ready to do it, you do it. But you should distract him out of the window. At 12:47, the chief states, he's going in, he's going in. Tell those guys in the west they're going in. Let them know. At 12:47, a USO deputy arrives in the west hallway with a sledgehammer. USO, I'm assuming, is a sheriff's officer. At 12:50, an ad hoc team assaults room 111. So we have all of this shit happening in the hallway. From 12:23, where I thought Vorpak arrived and they're like, get the hell out of my way. Let's do this. I would give them that benefit of the doubt if it didn't take them an additional 27 minutes to assault the room. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. I don't know, but I don't care. I don't know, and I don't care. If the team lead who showed up on site was a Vorpak agent and he had enough guys, like 2, and these dudes weren't doing their job, it's time to go to work, boys. This is what you get paid the big bucks for. It's time to go to work. You don't go to selection. You don't go through advanced training. You don't do all these high-speed schools to not go to work. It's time to go to work. Grab your shit and go. That's what he should have did. But instead, they went through a deliberate planning process, thinking this is a barricaded suspect, even after, at 12:21, as Vortak members are setting up, 4 shots are fired. The criteria for a hasty assault is children or innocent lives being lost. That should have activated the criteria. And you still didn't do anything about it. I'm sure there's excuses. I'm sure I'll get hammered by some Vortak agent taking up for his boys. Yeah, you can't convince me otherwise. I'm looking at timelines and videos of incompetent people not doing their fucking job. I don't care. Well, chain of command, I don't care about your chain of command. Because there's a moral right. So we got 30 minutes to blaze through here. We'll go through this. Cops doing everything. Look at all these people doing all of this shit. While on the other side of a small classroom wall, children are lying in pools of blood fighting for their fucking lives. Let that sink in. That's what's happening. You got dozens of officers in tactical gear and equipment, ballistic helmets, the sexiest carbines, the sexiest pistols, the sexiest high-speed gear that an operator can have. But everybody wants to be an operator until it's time to do operator shit.
Facts.
Not one of these dudes is doing their fucking job. In here, all this high-speed gear, all this kitten gear, all this kitten gear. So Looking at that dude again on the left side, he looks to me like he is a medic. For all those that are wondering about the hand sanitation guy, I don't even give a shit about that guy. I care more about the competency of tactical officers not doing their job. So we get like 30 minutes of this taking place outside the classroom. These are officers who are literally standing outside that classroom with their guns slung like they're hanging outside at a security checkpoint in a fucking nightclub. Like they're literally hanging out. I don't even want to roll this because it's so freaking embarrassing for me to watch.
So, all the way to freaking hell through. Ridiculous. There's not much more to be said here, even, really. They all failed. They all failed. I hope that all the parents of the kids who died take these cops to court for accessory to murder because they didn't do their damn job. That's what I want. And I want these cops to get locked up for life.
This level of incompetency. They're having conversations outside of the breach point, talking about what they should do, instead of having a conversation outside the breach point and then doing the actual thing. Let's get to something happening. Somebody doing something. Now, here's what I'll say about this guy. This is likely one of the lead paramedics that is either attached to the SWAT team, but he's preparing for a mass casualty event. This is so deliberate in the actual tactics and techniques that these guys are like setting up for everything in advance. They're like counting down to the time in which they're going to initiate the assault. That's not how this shit works, guys. But here we are. What I love about this guy, who is probably the only guy that I'll give any credit to, is he is getting involved and he's understanding the mass casualty event these officers are going to be in. So just to let you know, you have DPS guys on the outside. You have Uvalde, a morbidly obese officer from Uvalde on the far right side, hanging out. And then you have this paramedic in between a tactical law enforcement agency about to breach, and then the Uvalde Police Department. And I want you to watch his actions. He's giving guidance. He's giving instructions. As they're staging for this assault, they're getting ready for war. It takes one human being. Talk to Kyle Morgan. Talk to Christian Craighead. It takes one human being with a will and the motivation to end violence, to stop this all. One. It doesn't take an assault force. It doesn't take a deliberate timeline, and it certainly shouldn't have taken over in an hour. We're at 12:44, guys. This scumbag piece of shit entered this school at 12:33. We're at 12:44. We're 6 minutes away from an assault. Let me give you some news about the assault. The suspect, when he went in the classroom, wasn't even in the classroom. He was in the closet. How long was that suspect in the closet? Waiting. Meaning we could have had a lot of time to pull those innocent children out. Yeah, but in hindsight. No, it's not in hindsight. It's what we do. You move to the sound of gunfire. You stop and eliminate the threat. That's what you do. That's your job. If you're not willing to do that, then get a fucking new job. It's what me and my special operations peers train you to do across this country. There are many agencies and many men and women that I've trained who have done it, who are willing to do it. But in this case, they weren't. They didn't have the willpower. They certainly didn't have the competency. And they just didn't do it. They know what time the assault's going to take place. They're staging for a deliberate. I can tell in their actions. They're taking knees, waiting at a last cover concealed position to initiate the assault. They're waiting. The paramedic is backing off these guys, which is good, because he's telling them to back off. He's literally giving them instruction because they're so incompetent. You have a tactical assault force about to conduct a hostage rescue, and you're standing in a hallway with guns, like you're going to do something. How about you just get the fuck out of the way and let men do their job? Thank God the paramedic's there, because if he wasn't there when the assault initiates in about 2 minutes, then these idiots would have ran up behind him. 1 minute out from the assault.
This all took way too goddamn long. Way too goddamn long. As soon as they got the first shield, and even before that, when the first officers got into the freaking building, they should have effected an immediate breach and immediately engaged the shooter. I don't care about what metric you go by. Your life is not as important as those kids' lives because you signed your life to their safety. But we're almost an hour into this. This is a failure all the way around.
So it's about 30 seconds out, guys. I intentionally want you to see this because I want you to walk through it with me. So it's about to happen. Watch the paramedic's actions after the assault initiates. He's literally giving commands and hand and arm signals, directing traffic. That's called command and control. It's what the chief didn't do. It's what a lot of the initial tactical response officers didn't do. Look at him. Look at him. These idiots would run in that building. This dude right here with a bald head, the morbidly obese guy, is trying to run in there. I assume this guy on the right, who's like in tears, this guy right here, I assume that's the officer. He actually looks kind of familiar. Wait, let me pause right here. That's the officer. I'm getting chills right now. That is the officer whose wife was in that classroom. I recognize his face. If I'm wrong, leave it in the comments that I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the officer. That's why he was holding him back. Did you guys see that? Let's rewind that. So his buddy has him grabbed by the back of his armor. And you can see him. His behavior is like he's trying to get in there. His buddy's grabbing him. I thought he was grabbing him because he's like, that's how you stage for a movement. But it's not. I think he was holding him back. So let's just watch his behavior as this thing kicks off in about 30 seconds. I get anxiety in my chest thinking about that officer, knowing that his wife or spouse is in that room. There's a couple officers. There was one officer who had children in the school, but I think I recognize his face as being the officer whose wife was in that classroom. I might be completely wrong, but it looks like him. All right, so they initiate the assault. They're going in. One guy squeezed him, let go, but then they grabbed him. And then his gun swung with his left arm, and he's like choking or holding back tears. You can see him right there. And then he pushes him, or he takes himself outside of it, and he's in tears. And his buddy's like holding him, like don't go, and he wants to go. So why this is blurred, I want you to understand this. The brave officers of BORTAC, after they entered that room, they went straight to the suspect and neutralized him. As they were doing that, because that's how these operations work, they immediately started pulling casualties out. Heartbreaking, because they're pulling children back to a collection point, which is a casualty collection point known as a CCP, to start triaging and assessing who's alive and who's dead, and working the priorities of care. Tragic that this happened in this timeline in this way, but that doesn't take away the brave actions of BORTAC, the officers on scene who actually did something about it and bravely went in that room and gunned that piece of shit down. I just wish, in looking at the timeline, that they would understand how many children potentially would still be alive if they did it at 12:36, 3 minutes after this piece of shit entered this school. But they didn't.
So in that hallway, they're all grouped up. They're all literally filling up the hallway. If the gunman just opened the door and started shooting, he'd hit multiple people. That hallway is a fatal funnel the whole way until you take command of it. They should have breached as soon as they got inside. And the dude outside who called for permission to take down the gunman could have prevented all of this. But what did he do? He was like, "Can I please shoot the guy who's going to go inside the school and kill kids?" Fucking unbelievable.
There are precious moments in an active shooting that you have as the momentum of the active shooter's psychology and actions are creating chaos. You lose that speed, surprise, and violence of action when you decide at any point to stop the momentum. I saw one officer in this entire video, one single officer driving momentum by himself. By himself. By himself. One officer out of this whole entire group of officers outside of the BORTAC agents who actually did the assault. One officer that had the momentum and the right mindset to get in that room and in that threat. The only problem, he had no support. Zero support. In conclusion, I'm going to read you the tactical assessment as identified by the alert organization, that's ALERRT.org. We identified 3 key issues that occurred prior to the suspect gaining entry in the building. First, a teacher propped open the exterior door at 11:27. The staff noted rocks were placed at most external doors of the building. Based on the observation, it appears that propping the doors open is a common practice at this particular school. While the teacher did keep the rock and close the door prior to the suspect making entry, and the propping open of the door did not affect what happened in the situation, circumventing access control procedures can create a situation that results in danger to students. After the teacher closed the door, she did not check to see if the door was locked. Perhaps this was because the door is usually locked. However, on this day, the door was not locked. And because it was not locked, the attacker was able to immediately access the building. This again highlights the importance of not circumventing access control procedures. We have access control procedures that are followed in a standard operating procedure in every federal government building in the United States of America, times 3,000 plus buildings. We have 100,000 plus schools.
So this is a problem we have in the barracks all the time. When I was still getting into the military, where soldiers would prop open the back doors of the barracks so that people could sneak in through the back door instead of going from the smoking pit, which is at the back of the building, all the way around to the front freaking door. You know what happens to those soldiers that are caught doing that? Company grade Article 15. $45 days and 45 days. So 45 days no pay, 45 days extra duty, which means after everybody else gets off work, they're still at work until midnight when they have to wake up at 4:30 in the freaking morning. And that's the very least. That's the very least of punishment. A lot of guys will get field grade. Reduction in rank, 90 and 90. So 90 days no pay, 90 days extra duty. And even those are just the least of it. We have entry control procedures for a reason. Circumventing them puts everybody in danger. Everybody. And like I said earlier, the teacher panicked because she wasn't prepared for this. She was just living in her la-la-la, lackadaisical world of like, this shouldn't be happening. It can't be happening. Oh, if nobody was allowed to own guns. I guarantee you that was her type of mentality. She didn't even adhere to the basic security standards of the building.
Those are major secured buildings, times thousands. The smaller buildings are tens of thousands. We secure our federal government buildings to protect what? The politicians, the paperwork, the judges, the lawyers, the senators, the congressmen and women. But we have no procedures to stop violent actors from affecting our children in schools that are public. When the first responding officers drove through the parking lot of the west side of the building at high rate of speed, the suspect was in the parking lot at the time, but the officer did not see him. If the officer had driven more slowly or packed his car at the edge, he would potentially see the suspect. A little bit more difficult to buy into that argument because it is nitpicking. That's what these investigations do. But let me read the third. A Uvalde PD officer reported that he was at the crash site and observed the suspect carrying a rifle prior to the suspect entering the West Hall exterior door. The UPD officer was armed with a rifle and sighted in to shoot the attacker. However, he asked his supervisor for permission to shoot. The UPD officer did not hear a response and turned to get confirmation from the supervisor. When he turned back to address the suspect had already entered the West Hall exterior door at 11:33. The officer was justified in using deadly force to stop the attacker. Texas Penal Code 9.32, deadly force in defense of person, states an individual is justified in using deadly force when the individual reasonably believes the deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent the commission of murder, amongst other crimes. In this instance, the UPD officer would have heard gunshots and or reports of gunshots and observed an individual approaching the school building armed with a rifle. He even saw, cited, and asked for permission and didn't engage. You think that's a training issue? And a reasonable officer would conclude in this case, based on and upon the totality of the circumstances, the deadly force is warranted. Furthermore, the UPD officer was approximately 148 yards from the West Hall exterior door. 150 fucking yards. What's the hold on 148 yards with a 5.56, 55 grain, then a 62 grain at 148 yards? It's called point of aim, point of impact. You put the little dot on the little target and you break the shot. They repeat and line it out. 148 yards. The maximum effective range of a 5.56 by 45 millimeter carbine is 550 meters. 550 meters. Area, it's 800 meters. You have 60 inches of hold at 500 yards. You have about half of that at 400. Point of aim, point of impact at 148 yards. The hold is nominal at best. The officer did comment that he was concerned that if he missed his shot, the round could have penetrated the school and injured the students. Hard to do on a brick building with a 5.56 round. But again, leading back to how we make things better or right. This officer obviously was not trained, but he had a duty rifle. California highway patrol officers in the state of California don't have optics on rifles. That's how fucked up they are. Why? Politics, incompetency. Nobody wants to do their fucking job. These guys, small town Uvalde, Texas, had optics on their guns. We also note that the current state of Texas standards for patrol rifle qualifications do not require officers to fire the rifles from more than 100 yards away from the target. It is therefore possible that the officer had never fired his rifle at a target that was that far away. Ultimately, the decision to use deadly force lies with the officer who will use that force. If the officer was not confident that he could both hit target and of his backdrop if he missed, he should have not fired. 148 yards. If any of these three key issues had worked out differently, they could have stopped the tragedy that followed. First, had the exterior door been secured, the suspect may have never gained access to the building, period. At the very least, the suspect would have been delayed, and responding officers who were minutes behind him, one on him through his fucking optic, then the responding officers would have more time to find a stop issue before he entered the building. The PD officer might have seen the suspect had the officer not been driving as fast if he had approached on foot. Lastly, had the UPD officer engaged the suspect with a rifle, then we know the fucking answer to that. But he didn't. He fucking didn't. The initial response within the building, as identified, had three key issues that occurred before the suspect enters room 111 and 112. The first was the Uvalde ISD, their school district, has protocols in place requiring doors to remain locked at all times. And the school was currently on an active lockdown prior to the suspect gaining entry to the school. The suspect was still able to gain access to room 111. We reviewed information from the investigation officer that the lock on room 111 had been reported as damaged multiple times. However, this has not been confirmed through work orders at this time. Regardless, the suspect seen entering the room, exiting the room, and then re-entering the room again prior to the officers entering the building at 11:35. The only way to engage the lock is to insert a key from the hallway side of the door. At no point is the suspect observed entering the hallway and engaging the locking mechanism. Based upon this, we believe the lock to room 11 was never engaged. You don't need a Halligan to breach a door that's not fucking locked. The second issue involves having teams of officers on both ends of the hallway. Yeah, you think? Alert teaches that a single team should be in a single area of the building at a time. Having multiple teams splitting or an existing team can create a crossfire situation, especially for incompetent officers who aren't trained.
I think 150 yards is like 400 feet. Or is it like 400? It's 400 something feet. The dude should have taken the risk. Especially since it's a brick building. It only takes me a second upon target acquisition to know what's behind my target and to know that I can engage. .556 doesn't usually go through a body. Once it hits bone, it fragments or it starts to tumble. The officer had .556. Which means, even if he had engaged the dude and started a shootout right there, he had almost no chance of penetrating the building with his weapon. So even if he missed, he could still engage. This is tiresome.
I'm adding some things. I'm adding here. If the suspect had emerged from the classroom, officers from both teams presumably would have opened fire, resulting in a high likelihood of officers at either end of the hallway shooting officers at the other end. The team should have quickly communicated, and officers at the end of the hallway should have backed out and redeployed from another position. You think? Additionally, alert teaches that teams consist of up to four members. Team larger than four tend to create congestion and interfere with the ability of the team to operate quickly and effectively. The third issue revolves around losing momentum, as described for me. The first three responding UPD officers enter the west hallway at 11:35, and additional 4 officers enter the hallway at 11:36. Audio recordings indicate the suspect was actively firing his weapon until 11:36. The first responding officers correctly moved toward the active gunfire. Children dying. Let me remind you, this isn't just gunfire. Arbitrary rounds fired in a fucking direction. This is rounds being put in children's fucking bodies. Like, does that not fucking comprehend for people, for cops, for officers who are in that fucking hallway? The 7 officers converged on rooms 111 and 112 at 11:37 as the officers approached the door. The suspect began firing. This gunfire caused both teams to retreat. We note the officers did not make contact with the doors. They never touched any part of the doors, as noted by alert. The team approaching from the north fell back to the T intersection. This position is approximately 67 feet from the doors of room 11 and 12. This team approaching from the south fell back to the south end of the hallway. The team in the south hallway were not visible on camera, so the distance from the affected classroom is not known. Alert teaches first responders' main priority in an active shooter is to first stop the killing and stop the dying via their protocol. This is not just shit that's made up. This is their training. Stop the killing in black, bold font, and stop the dying in black, bold font.
And yet they did neither of these. Even at the bottom of this, it says, there is a chance that officers will be shot, injured, or even killed while responding. This is something that every officer should be acutely aware of when they become a law enforcement officer. Castrated police, untrained police, unmilitarized police, cowardly and incompetent police. All those play a big role in this right here.
Alert in the FBI 2020, subparagraph 2-9, 2-15 to 2-16, inherent in both stopping the killing and dying is the priority of life saving. At the top of the scale, the first priority is preserve lives of victims and potential victims. Second is the safety of the officers. Fuck your safety. Fuck your comforts in that hallway. This order means that we expect officers to assume risk to save innocent lives. Responding to an active shooter is a dangerous task. There is a chance the officers will be shot, injured, and even killed. God damn, man, it feels good on your Instagram post to talk about how you're a cop and how cool you are and all the rat shit you do. But damn, if you're put in a situation where you actually have to follow through with that virtue. To adhere to the priority of life, the first responding officer's action should be determined based on the current driving force. In this instance, there is a suspect actively shooting children. The active gunfire is the driving force. The officers correctly responded to the driving force by moving towards the gunfire, as we talked about in the video. Damn good on that first officer for driving momentum. But fuck all of you for backing the fuck out like cowards. To adhere to the priority of life, the first responding officer's action should be determined based on the current driving force. In this instance, their suspect is shooting inside an occupied elementary school. The active gunfire is the driving force. The officers correctly respond to the driving force by moving towards the shot of gunfire. Ideally, officers would have placed accurate fire on the attacker when the attacker gets shooting at them. Alert trains that widely use ABCs to cover accurate return fire, body armor, and cover. But it didn't. They changed the circumstance prior to the assault. As discussed, the situation became static at 11:38. Prior to 11:38, the responding officers began treating the situation as if it was a hostage barricade rather than an active shooter event. We talked about that definitive timeline shift. The timeline shows that the shooter was killed at 12:50. This section will describe the escalating circumstances that unraveled over the 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 26 seconds. 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 26 seconds. 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 26 seconds between officers taking static positions in the moment the suspect was killed. There were key moments. Factors increasing. We identified 2 factors that we believe increase the exigency. I don't know why you would use that word because there's a synonym for that. But the situation that means compounding bad factors and should have prompted officers to execute an immediate action plan. Factors increasing capability. So two of the main issues: gunfire. At 11:40 and 58 seconds, the suspect fired one shot. This is post-entry, post-initial call for a deliberate circumstance, which we said we're going to barricade and turn it into a hostage rescue. Even the chief of police was negotiating with a fucking child killer.
And again, I'm going to harp on that. Why did we do away with you don't negotiate with terrorists? He's already killed kids. There's no negotiation to be had. In fact, his death warrant should have been signed as soon as he approached that school with a weapon. But what do you hear leftists saying? It's all about the gun.
At 11:40, the suspect fires one shot. At 11:44, the suspect fired another shot. And finally, at 12:21, the suspect fires 4 more shots. During each of these instances, the situation had gone active, and the immediate action plan should have triggered because there was reason to believe that the people were being killed. We're saying this because I'm emotional about it, and I'm telling you through a fucking video. I haven't even read this report in its entirety in these bullet points because I want to articulate the doctrine. The doctrine is when gunshots are fired, post, containment, static positioning, whatever the department wants to call it, which is a more deliberate approach, and you hear one gunshot, that changes the standard operating procedures to activate an emergency crisis response of killing bad guys and rescuing innocent people. It becomes a hasty fucking assault. And I say hasty, but it's actually deliberate because the deliberate is already pre-planned and trained. When you arrive, it's time to fucking go. It's hasty in the movement. It's deliberate in the action. Tactical operators. When many officers flow through the scene, the first known tactical operator, Bortak, arrived at 12:15. 12:15. Bortak operators receive extensive training and equipment to respond to barricaded suspects. Additionally, it is common for tactical operations to be turned over to tactical operators upon their arrival. However, it appears the control of tactical operations was not given the tactical operators on scene.
As soon as tactical operators were on scene and ready to do shit. But you know what? On the other hand, look, if it was me there, get out of my fucking way. I'm going to shove you aside. I'm going to kick you aside to get to that door. If you want to go in, follow me. We're going now. If you're in my way and you're trying to impede, I'm going to hurt you. The priority is to get in there and take down the shooter. So on one hand, okay, good for Bortak showing up. On the other hand, as soon as he knew the situation, which he most likely did being called in, grab an officer, hey, what the hell's going on? Okay, now I know, I'm going in. But the chain of command, fuck your chain of command. You haven't done shit. You got armor and weapons, and you haven't done a damn thing. Fine.
Or for the case of both the civil and criminal suit that should go against the Uvalde Police Department as well as the chief. CS gas between 12:10 and 12:14. Gas master passed out, and the CS gas canner and launchers were on scene. The assault team entered the room at 12:50 in 3 seconds. 1 hour, 11 minutes, 26 seconds after the first responding officer took static positions. The assault team, Bortak, had keys that could unlock the door. It does not appear that any officer has ever tested the doors to see if they were locked. As we described earlier, we do not believe the door to room 111 was locked. We have an entire narrative that was set out by Uvalde Police Department. The reason they didn't enter because the door was locked. There are tactics to get around locked doors that include breaching tactics and certain SOPs from different agencies using Halligan breaching tools, sledgehammers, even explosive and ballistic and mechanical tools. We do not believe that room 111 was locked.
This goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Every officer should be trained a certain way. Standard. Every officer, if they're not going to work out themselves, then there should be a very strict training regimen, just like we have in the military. A couple hours before your shift, you're doing 40 minutes or at least an hour of straight up physical training. At least. Before you start your day. And whenever officers are off duty, concurrent and consistent training on all weapons and all tools and medical training. And every officer should have a crisis response kit. Ballistic shield, tactical weapon, armor, helmet, breaching equipment. We used to make breaching, we used to make breach explosives with a dip can. We'd stuff that sucker full of HME or Semtex or C4, wrap it in some tape, make sure there's a blasting cap inside of that sucker, and then on one side we have an adhesive. So we could run up to that door, because every one of us would be carrying one, run up to that door, slap that sucker on it, pop it, and effect entry immediately. What an absolute fucking detestable goddamn...
As this section illustrates, there are multiple points where the driving force increased through additional gunfire. However, officers did not act on these increases in driving force. Additionally, officers on scene continue to receive additional equipment and tactical components that increase their capability to address the suspect.
That shit should have already been on scene, because every officer should be equipped with it. So if like 3 officers show up and they hear it's an active shooter, they're ready, they're trained, they're willing. You shouldn't have to wait for everything to show up.
Ultimately, it is unclear why the officers decided to assault the room at 12:50. There was no apparent change in driving force or response capability at this point. We had capability, we did nothing. And then we waited, and we waited. We increased our capability, and we did nothing. We staged and did nothing. And then we just decided there wasn't an activation measure to initiate the deliberate assault that took place at 12:50. Besides maybe just a timeline. We're going to assault at 12:50. Well, how about you fucking assault now? While we do not have definitive information at this point, it is possible some of the people who died during this event could have been saved. Let me read this very pointed and clearly for you. This is from a Texas report from an agency that does investigations. While we do not have definitive information at this point, it is possible that some of the people who died during this event could have been saved if they had received more rapid medical care. In the next part of this AR, we intend to address the stop the dying portion of that response occurred following the killing of a suspect. Additionally, we have noted that the report does not appear that the effective incident command was established during this event. The lack of, let's just call it leadership. Nobody was a leader. I saw more leadership out of this paramedic than I did anybody else. The lack of effective command likely impaired both the stop the killing and stop the dying parts of the response. The final part of this AR will address incident command issues. The rest of this report lies out the failures post-assault when they killed a suspect and how they could have triaged better, how could they have had a better incident command center, and it goes on for an additional series of pages in a different report. Let me just give you some closing thoughts. Defund the police was never a good idea. For all the idiots who jumped on the bandwagon, fuck you. Really. Like, fuck you, for real. You're disgusting. It disgusts me as an American, as a veteran, as a business owner, as a father, that there are idiots in this country who think defunding the people who are supposed to serve and protect our communities is a good idea over whack politics. That's all it is. You've politicized all of these things, creating all this radical ideology with your BLMs and your Antifas. And the only end result is innocent people pay, including dozens of people who were murdered in peaceful protests. But we don't talk about that because it's too controversial, because it has to do with race. So we can't talk about it. It has to do with mental health. So we can't talk about it. The reason this happened is not because of a gun, just because incompetent officers didn't want to do their jobs, but the totality of circumstances, including mental health crisis. The person who shot his grandmother in the face, who crashed his car in a ditch, who killed 19 innocent human beings, little babies, children who had their whole lives ahead of them, including 2 teachers, is the problem. We don't want to pay attention to the correlation of social media and suicide. We want to talk about gun control, but we don't want to talk about guns killing people when they use it on themselves, because 65% of all gun deaths are suicide. We are living in very dangerous and volatile times. My advice to the police department that's in this case is get your lawyers and your story straight. You are going to be civilly sued. You're going to likely be held civilly liable. And I personally think, I'm not a lawyer, but there are probably criminal allegations that could bring charges against this level of incompetence. We fry commanders in war for this level of incompetence. We fry operators in war for this level of incompetence. Somebody needs to answer that. I would also recommend that if you're a police officer, you take heed and treat it seriously that your job is to serve and protect by training on your own time. When I was a special operations guy, I still trained. Me and Kevin Owens went on by ourselves and shot competitions. We did workout routines on our own time because that was our life. That was not only our profession and our job, but our life. If you're going to treat this role and responsibility seriously, then do the training. It really agitates the fuck out of me that I put it out on blast that I'm going to do free training, and then I host that free training and nobody shows up. But the next day people show up at $600 a slot, but law enforcement officers who are offering the training for free that sign up can't have the common decency to show up to get trained. So there's a cultural issue. It's not every institution. I work with several agencies in the United States of America who have went in there with their bare fucking hands. But there's obviously a cultural issue at Uvalde's police department. There's obviously cultural issues at this location and this instance of incompetence and people not willing to put it on the line. The thin blue line. I'm not attacking officers. And if you're one of those guys who are like, you're a bunch of bootlickers and you do this, you do that, fuck you. I don't care. Because what I want to do is help those men and women in uniform who do want the training to receive the training and be better prepared for that worst case scenario. Because this shit can happen in your backyard. If you haven't realized it already, no policy, no proposal policy has done anything to affect change in this instance. A 30-round magazine ban is going to change this instance? No. Mental health protocols is going to help this. Taking this shit serious is going to help it. That starts with you personally, because that's within your control. It starts with your family and your community. It's time that you cut the umbilical cord and start being more self-reliant, because this idea of outsourcing everything, including security of yourself and your family, is no longer warranted or valid. These are proven instances where it's no longer valid. It started for me, and BLM and Antifa started attacking our communities, and we thought culturally that was okay. And innocent people lost their lives. Innocent business owners lost their businesses, and we're just rooting them on. Well, I wasn't on that bandwagon. I didn't post on Tuesday the Black Square because I didn't give a fuck about radical human beings trying to divide us. I'm an American first and foremost, and so should you. If you want to affect change, get with your local sheriffs and police department and help them. Campaign, raise awareness, sit in that local legislative office, and let your voice be heard, not just your vote. That's how we produce change. You have to get off your ass. You have to do something. Being radical and a virtue signaler talking shit, yeah, that will get you somewhere, but not very far. Guys, this sucks. I hate talking about this shit, but it's important. We have to be willing to confront the worst parts of our nation. There are so many good things about this country. I love this fucking country. I would do anything for it. I would have done anything for those fucking children. I would have given my lives, and all of my peers that I serve with, and most people I surround myself with would have done the same. It's a bummer to me that I have to do this kind of review and get this passionate and be this angry and frustrated and emotional, but it has to be done. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. I'm not going to produce it, can it, make it seem like it's something it's not, because this is me. If you don't like me, I don't know what to do. Unsubscribe, delete and block me. Till next time, guys.
Oh, brother. There we go. This is a request from Brandon Peters on the Discord. Cowardice and lack of training are not the same. There is no excuse. And I agree. I agree completely. This should not have happened. but it did. It absolutely happened. Because of defund the police, leftists, Democrats, and the castration and pushback against militarization of our police departments. And the campaign that blames everything not on the shooters, but on the tools the shooters used. You have to understand, when these people who talk about gun control, they're not talking about bad people. They're just talking about the gun. They don't care about the people. They don't. They don't at all. They only care about the weapon. They always talk about the tool and never the individual. That should tell you everything you need to know. Everything. If you're going to offload blame from the human being to the inanimate object they use, that means that you're more about being able to take away the inanimate object than you do about the lives of children. That's what being anti-gun means. That's what gun control means. Gun control isn't to protect me and you. It's not. None of these movements are about me and you. These movements are about an ideology. The ideology is their God. They don't care about you. They don't care about your kids. They don't care about any kids. They don't care about anyone else. They just want to have control. Let me read the chat real quick. All right, let me see. Brandon Peters, I'm eating chocolate pudding to deal with the level of BS in this video of police failing beyond infinity. Yep. Sometimes I wonder if I'm in the worst timeline. Probably. Annette Fisher, Guten Morgen. Annette Fisher, I sped up the video. Brandon Peters twice. I'm against police defunding and all for police reform. Yeah, reform the police by militarizing them. That will do a lot of good. Yes, this is Mike Glover. Space Shark answered that. Brandon Peters, it's clear these cops don't do physical training whatsoever. WTF, it should be a requirement. It should. Annette Fisher, arterial bleeding goes fast, fatal. Yes. Yes. Annette Fisher, in Germany, would GSG-9 becoming head of command? It'd probably be a good idea. Although GSG-9, I mean, they're okay. A Space Shark, unrelated, but all kids should be taught first aid. Yes. Brandon Peters, 4 shields. What else do you want, guys? You have armor and guns. Get the hell in there. You were there in 3 minutes. You could have gotten them before you entered the building. Yep. Brandon Peters, GSG-9 is pretty good. Yeah, they're okay. Annette Fisher, kids should never must learn this. They should be kids first. It's a matter of adults to protect and aid. But yes, it's a dangerous place, our world today, sadly. Thank you, everybody on the left, for that. Brandon Peters, don't talk to the bad guy. Put him down, you dumbass people. Facts. A Space Shark, it is my belief that parents should teach kids how to protect themselves so we won't always have to. Facts. Annette Fisher, I understand what you think. Hopefully Germany stays a little safer. Brandon Peters, kids should know the basics at least. Yes, they should. Annette Fisher, did someone lose his job from the sheriff's office? Hope for the parents take them to court. I hope every single one of them officers fries. Every freaking one. Give them the chair for their cowardice and incompetence. Brandon Peters, unfortunately, legally speaking, police don't have to save people, which is pretty insane. They should be required to live by their motto. Yes, they should. Annette Fisher, total chaos. It was indeed. Brandon Peters, 148 yards is 444 feet. I was close. Brandon Peters, what an absolute shit show all around. Total disgrace. Indeed. Brandon Peters, are you going to do my request today? Just wondering. If you are, can you do the Battle of Beecher Island? It's about an hour and 15 minutes. I'll see if I can do it tomorrow. I'll probably make it an upload. I'm going to try to do Discord reactions all week so I can catch up on all that stuff. And of course, there's going to be a million people that are going to see this video and be like, no, you're wrong. We need to take away all the guns. Take away whatever you want. People can still get guns illegally. Only law-abiding citizens are going to give up their weapons. And then guess who's left that's armed? The government and criminals. You're a dumbass if you believe in that shit. And then, of course, there are going to be people like, oh, no, it's just the fact that the police department exists. No, it's just the fact that this police department is incompetent. Incompetent, and they're literally taking whoever they can get. And it's y'all's fault, Democrats, for defund the police because all the good cops left. All the good guys who would have immediately breached that door and started going to town, they left. They're gone. There's pretty much nobody left who is in law enforcement that is of any good quality whatsoever. They're just dudes with a badge and a gun. Just like you feared they would be. But now you've made it happen. You're welcome, Democrats. Now you're killing kids by proxy. And then for the people who are like, we shouldn't militarize police. Yes, we absolutely should. That should be part of our police reform. Militarization. Strict training regimen. Learning how to use their weapons and gear. And having kits in every freaking vehicle that every single law enforcement officer is trained on. And for the people who are like, for those who are going to be like, well, it's just that guns are bad. No. Is a hammer bad? Thousands of people die per year because they're killed with a hammer. Is a knife bad? Thousands of people a year are killed by knives. Are rocks and bricks bad? People die by them too. There's thousands and thousands of car crashes per year. Are you trying to take away people's cars? Thousands of people die per year from obesity. Are you trying to take away spoons and forks and get rid of all the sugary foods? You're not, are you? Because you don't actually care. You don't. You're all about the thing, not the person. That makes you evil. It does. Because you want to disarm everybody so that everybody is a victim. And then when it comes to mental health, people on the left talk all the time about mental health. They do. But what are they actually doing about it? They're not themselves doing anything about it. No, they want to leave it up to the state. They want to leave it up to somebody else to do it. I just want to virtue signal and then do nothing. All right, let's look at this. Let's look at the chat. Brandon Peters, cool. Space Shark, terrorists like mass shooters should be exempt from laws against cruel and unusual punishment. They'll think twice if the consequences aren't worth it. Yes, they would. Brandon Peters, did you hear about the Japanese guy who got killed by a dude with a homemade weapon? Pretty nuts. Well, it doesn't surprise me because Japan is one of the most disarmed countries on the planet. Yet they still have a bunch of crime. Annette Fisher talking about the ex-prime minister. Brandon Peters, one trained man is worth infinity more than unlimited cowards. Facts. Annette Fisher, his security was horrible. Yes, it was. We'll probably address that in another video or live stream. This one tuckered me out. This one tuckered me out. But yeah. Well, there we go. There you go, Brandon. You got your second reaction request of the day. I decided to do it as a live stream because it was too much to set up as an upload. Way too much. It took the last video like so forever to actually upload. So yeah. I'm beat. I am beat. What did y'all think? What did y'all think? Y'all let me know in the comments down below. All right, y'all know what time it is. You like me, you like the channel, or something like that. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit the join button if you want to keep the channel around. So yeah, until next time, I'm going to go to bed. Be good, be safe, make a good life for yourselves. Blastcapbadger, out.